Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and along with me is my esteemed colleague, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How you doing this morning, Dr. Joe?
I'm doing all right. I almost didn't understand what you're trying to say.
Thought we were introing a competition of sort.
Right. No, I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Excellent, excellent. So we'd like to welcome all of our viewers and listeners back for another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. And just thank all of our viewers for getting the word out, sharing it out, sending likes, sending ideas and everything. That is wonderful. We appreciate it and love you guys for it. So today's topic in our usual fashion is one of us intros, which today I pulled the lucky straw, and then I'll pass that straw over to Joe. Hopefully he does not use it because that'd be really creepy and weird. So
Yeah.
today's topic is defining your destination. So when we think about that, defining your destination, Joe, what does that mean to you? We talk about defining your destination.
That's with all the things we talk about, I think that goes along with most of the topic. So
Mhm,
for instance, if you think about we talked about defining success,
mhm,
right? We've also talked about goal setting. So that's really in alignment with those types of things. And the other thing we'd stress every time on our episodes is the critical self-reflection,
mhm.
because it'd be really difficult or challenging to define your destination if you haven't done some of those things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, this is kind of maybe it's the um collaboration or conglomerate of all of those things that we've discussed
Mhm.
typically on our episodes. So, defining your destination, I think it could be a broad term in a way, because we could think about, like we always refer to, the our long scenic route that we
Mhm.
take. Defining your destination could turn into that, because you may have a destination in mind, things you want to do, things you want to accomplish. But even though you still have all of those things written down, we've said this in the past before too, you could have the perfect blueprint of how to get somewhere, but those variables are going to drop in there and not be expected. So even if you have your destination defined, it still could be a challenge to get there. But the idea is that you've done that, because if you don't define your destination, other people will be glad to define your
Absolutely.
destination for you. They will dictate what you should do, where you should go, and things you should do to get to that destination. So if you choose not to define your destination, other people will do that for you. And it looks like you're trying to jump in there.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's a little bit of throat clearing, allergies and stuff. So, yeah, it does. It actually that absolutely coincides with what you're talking about. I like how you brought up the roadmap again because, and owning your career because otherwise you're just floating down that river or down that tributary and you don't know where you're gonna wind up. You're gonna wind up in a stagnant pond. You're gonna wind up in the ocean. Are you gonna get
Right.
sucked away by a riptide and pulled in a completely different direction that you weren't expecting or prepared for? So, when we think about these analogies that we offer, it kind of helps put things in perspective because I don't, I mean, I suppose some people want their careers dictated for them, but that again is giving away a lot of control and a lot of yourself and putting that in someone else's hands. And
But that you're right. It could be one totally one sided, that
mhm,
someone could choose that to time to dictate everything. But at the
mhm,
same time, if you have mentors, coaches, people that are
right,
assisting you,
that's
you
that's true.
might welcome some of that
Hmm.
defining. And that was one of the things I was going to bring up, is the fact that, yeah, we want to define a lot of these things for ourselves, but at the same time, it,
Sometimes you need some
you know
help.
you're going to need some input from those
Yeah.
people
And if
that
you're
you trust.
derailed,
And
then to your point, you're gonna have to trust one or more
absolutely
people to pull you onto the right track if you're
right.
really derailed. So,
So I think it's great that we choose to take ownership, we define our destination, but at the same time, and that's why I kind of made a big caveat at the very beginning, that you could have this exactly as your destination defined completely, but life happens and
Yeah,
everything, all these things that you can't, predict may fall in your lap or may fall into this plan. And so that's why I say you may have the greatest intentions to do this a particular way, but again, life happens, things
yeah,
occur that you weren't expecting. And so that's why I say that's why I say this could be pretty broad, because we
hmm,
want to make that attempt to define our destination, but at the same time we also have to welcome those variables. Even us, me and you talking about it,
yeah,
we're providing advice, we're providing, maybe knowledge or information that may be helpful to them. So again, it's great that you take ownership, define what that looks like, and because you're gonna have to also be flexible.
yeah.
That's
I was
the
just gonna,
one
you took the
thing.
words right out of my mouth.
That's the one thing we've learned over the years, is that it's not gonna go
Yeah,
always go
you
as
can say I'm going
planned.
to be a doctor someday, and that type of doctor may completely change. You might be thinking
Absolutely.
medical school, and you're a physicist, and then you're a psychologist, and next thing you know, you're a veterinarian. Who knows? Who
Well,
knows?
again, and we've seen this before in the past too, or we talked about this in the past, where the one we always highlight is the sports figure,
Hmm.
the athlete that, all these years they've been an athlete, then as soon as they put the ball down or stop playing sports, they go down this other path, and it was
Hmm.
originally the path they wanted to go down,
Hmm.
but other people influences
Yeah,
defining their destination for them, they were able to be
yeah,
successful,
yeah.
but at the same time they weren't fulfilled. They didn't have that sense of, completion,
Hmm.
because there were still other things they wanted to do. So yeah, even, like I say, they may have as a kid desired to be a doctor, and then as life happens, they go
Or
through
their
life, they're
family wanted
like,
them to be a doctor or
right,
whatever.
and they go, and I actually had a friend in the military that, his dad was a doctor or a dentist, his brother was a surgeon, and that was their plan for him, to
Hmm.
be this, something in the medical field. And he, 1 year of college, and he was like, nope, this is not for me, and joined the Air Force.
Yeah,
Then he became a mechanic, because again, it wasn't the destination that he had defined for himself. and
yeah.
and fortunate for him, he was able to realize that and say, you know what, I'm not going to do this because it won't make me happy. And
And I'm
so,
glad you brought that up because that reminds me of one of my favorite stories from one of my favorite mentors. Um, and his name's Al, and he's retired military, and he was talking about his sons growing up and following in his path, and I was talking about my son, and he was in high school at the time, and he said, just remember, their path is not your path. They
right.
have to understand that, and you have to
Yep.
understand that because you can guide them, but they still have to pick their destination.
Right.
And I
Yep.
think that's an important thing to remember. As much as we want to help our kids and other people, and develop them and mentor them, coach them, we have to keep in mind that it's their journey, not ours. So we
Right.
cannot
Right.
dictate to them where to go. We can provide ideas for them to think about and contemplate and consider, and ultimately that person's going to have to decide which things they're going to try, and understand which things they like and which things they don't like.
And that was one of the points I was going to bring up, is the fact that, yeah, we can support, we can, offer suggestions and things like that, but ultimately it's that individual that's going to have to experience this. They're going to wake up, 20 years from now, however long it takes, and say, you know what, that was great advice, but maybe I shouldn't have listened to it, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I should have tried my own. And that's kind of where I was too, when I thought about, my life when I was age 40, thinking about, what's next for me. That's kind of what I thought about. Am I going to be happy when I get to this age, 60 or
Mm-hmm.
65, and say, that's what life was about.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to be happy with it? And that's that same kind of reflection you should have when you think about defining your destination.
Mm-hmm. What type
Again,
of
we
impact are you leaving behind?
exactly what is this? Am I going to be happy with,
Yeah.
the path I chose?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's I define my destination or allow somebody else to define my destination, which, what's going to make me happy? What am I going to reflect on in my, last years or the final years? Am I going to be happy with the things that I accomplished, or the things that I set out to, or did, or completed, or didn't complete? So You said it. It really ultimately comes down to that individual choosing to do that again,
Yeah,
whether it's defined for you or you define it yourself, because they're the ones that's going to wake up whatever time that is and say, hey, this is not really what I wanted to do.
right. Yeah, and the where you're going with this is making me think of a counter view of, the person who's very independent, very spontaneous, free will. I'm just going with the flow, and that's
Right.
and you know what? That's fine. That is a conscious choice, and that is a constant
Yep.
destination just to go with the flow. So, the paradigm or the model that we're providing or the tool that we're talking about, defining your destination, could be that. And for me, I'm not that kind of, I have to plan stuff out a little bit
Right.
more.
Yep.
Spontaneity is, you know, I don't know, risky or scary for some people. Some people it's exciting, but that spontaneity and that going with the flow is another type of destination that you can take. It's
Right.
just letting that carry you and reading the currents, if you will, of that river to get to where you want to be, wherever that is. So, understanding that, even just going with the flow is a destination in and of itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, you've made a conscious decision to accept it. How it comes to you. No different than like when we coach or when I coach people and just have them plant this one seed in their head they may not be thinking. And I always refer to you're working at an organization for a long time and 10, 20 years and you've been doing the same thing. You haven't advanced your skills or anything like that. And again, a layoff or something, you're displaced,
Mhm.
then what do you do? And so
Right,
that's what I kind of liken it to whenever you choose to not kind of define a path for yourself. If you just
right.
kind of let things happen for you, then sometimes you're going to be not pleasantly surprised by the results or what happened to you, because
Yeah.
either you're not prepared or
I was
you
just gonna
haven't been
say it's that being
intentional.
prepared thing,
Right.
especially in the economy today. It's probably one of the most volatile times we've seen in the last 3 decades, and the stability is wanes very significantly.
Right.
So, you think you're secure one day, and the next day you're being told to pack your stuff up and give them your
Yep.
ID card, and that's okay from a business perspective. Sometimes that's smart, but you still have to be prepared for that.
Right.
You're never
Right.
really as secure as you believe you are, because to organizations and companies, it is about the bottom line. And if they're
Right.
trying to
Yep.
show profit by reducing workforce or by cutting product lines, and that's what they're going to do. So what does that mean to us? Well, that's that being prepared piece again. It may be a
Right.
small chance, but it's still out there. And I guess my perspective is every day that goes by that it doesn't happen, it raises the question, does that increase the probability of it of that it will happen? And I
Right.
don't
Right.
know, because you don't know what your leadership is necessarily thinking sometimes. So, or your organization's goals are, or the hidden agendas are, or
Right.
what troubles are lurking underneath the water that you're trying. Wow, a lot of boat and water analogies today. But it's what are we doing to be prepared for that? Because
Right.
it does take time and effort to build that preparation, but that's also to understand, going back to the subject today, defining your destination. Where do you want to be? If X, Y, or Z happens, what does A, B, and C look like for you?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What is your backup plan? But you have to have that initial plan first
Mhm.
before you can start defining what the backup
Yeah,
plan is. So
yeah.
defining that destination is still very important. And like you just said, you may be everything's fine one day, but the next day you may be asked to pack your bags or
Mhm.
pack up your desk.
Or
Um,
reapply for your
oh,
position.
exactly.
That's
So
a crazy thought. You're
right.
you're senior in your
Absolutely.
organization or your department, and you're told to reapply, and next thing you know, for some reason, you're not qualified to do that anymore.
Exactly. Right. So that's why it's important again to define your destination. And like we've said, um, no matter how well you define this your destination, you're still going to run into, again, the reference to a map, a road map, or a trip, you're going to run into roadblocks, detours, things like that, bad weather,
Yeah.
all those types of things, bad traffic
Hmm.
accidents. If you again compare those to things that happen in your life after you define what this destination is, you are going to run into those types of things. And like you
Yeah.
said, to your point, you may drive miles where it's great stretch of road, no other vehicles on the road, and then all of a sudden you get into a certain city during rush hour, and now you're on the same in the same spot within a quarter of a mile for 3 hours
Yeah.
because you've run into this roadblock.
Hmm.
So that's how quick it could happen, and I say that with experience because again, traveling with the wife and the kids, going to different cities, we and then these some of the things we did because we had tried to have backup plans was we'd leave at different times. So that we'd leave in the morning, we'd
Hmm.
leave at 12 o'clock at night just to try and figure out what that looks like
Yeah.
for us to prevent us from getting stuck in traffic or things like that. But it came with that initial, okay, we've tried it this way
Hmm.
because we had our destination in mind, but this is what we ran into last time, so this time let's try it this way. And then again, now we can more clearly define that destination or how to get there because again we've tried some different things.
Hmm.
So that's the power of defining that destination. If you
Yeah.
know where you're going, and we said this many times before, if you know where you're going, and then kind of look at where you are today, then you can start to try and figure out how you're going to get
Right.
there.
Yeah.
And
You
so
said that many
that's
times.
so that's the power of defining that destination is used control, to the furthest degree that you can,
Hmm.
um where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. So that's
Yeah.
the importance of defining that destination.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot so far about, the concept of defining your destination. What are some of the things that we can, let's talk about some of the things that we can do to help us define our destination. So, and I know we've sprinkled some things in there a little bit, but I'm sure our listeners are like, okay, this is great. I have to define a definition. How do I do that? So, I'm just going to start with, are you happy with where you're at? And
Right.
what if something happened to your point, a road bump or something like that, uh, comes your way? What's your backup plan? Do you have
Right.
a backup plan? Are you prepared? If it's your career, is your resume up to date? Have you done what you need to do to make your resume stand out? Are you confident with your interviewing skills? Or what about if that bump in the road is actually an advancement? Are you prepared to take that
Right.
next step
Yep.
up or over if they're being displaced from your department? Are you prepared to go to another department within your company? And what does that look like? What can you bring to them? So, I guess one of the big pieces I like to bring up with this is don't devalue your worth because, companies are there to try to get as much out of you as they can for as little as they can. So, if you're willing to do a $500,000 job for $25 an hour, that's a choice that you've made, but don't do it because you feel that's all you're worth. I would challenge that people are worth a lot more than they give themselves credit for.
That's true, Dave. But to kind of assist you with that and making that determination whether you're willing to accept that $25 an hour job, but it's a much higher paying or should be a much higher paying job. I'd say kind of what I started with at the very beginning was defining your goals,
Yeah.
creating the goals, because even if you've identified your goal, okay, I want a promotion, so
Mm-hmm.
these are the things I'm doing to get that promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm in a position to be promoted, these are the things I'm doing to help
Right.
facilitate that.
Right.
So, and we've said this many times before too. Sometimes we do have to take a lateral move,
Yeah.
or maybe
Or
step
you're
back a
involuntarily,
little
or
bit.
they involuntarily step you down.
Absolutely. So, but still having that goal in mind that sometimes, and we just talked about it with our defining destination, the fact that sometimes these things are going to pop up and you can say you're going to be prepared for them, but you may not be. But if you have goal in mind, it just becomes a detour maybe on your goal path or your plan. So having set your goals, and working towards achieving your goals is part of defining that destination. And part of that could be, like you said, taking a job that you may not want, but it may give you the skills you need
Right.
to apply for the one you really want. So it still comes down to you owning that process, you defining that process. And as I said at the very beginning, if you don't, then somebody else is going to, help you align with
Right.
them or with the organization, where in your case you may not want to. And we talked a bit about this maybe on a recent podcast about, the square peg trying to fit in a round hole.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what happens. If we don't define, if we don't own our process, then people will start to trim those things, kind of like you just said, devalue what you bring to the table, because they don't need all those extra things you bring to the table.
Right.
They only need these things. And
Right.
so they start to trim your things, the things you have down. So again, you have a couple of choices. You can accept it because it may get you to where you want to go, or you can just say, you know what, I don't want to trim those things away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, downgrade myself. So I
Yeah.
choose to walk away, or I choose a different path.
Right.
But you can do that if you defined your goals, if you defined what your destination looks like. Again, you should expect all these differences and variables that drop in there. But and me and you have both experienced this. We had an end state and we were able to achieve them,
Mm-hmm.
although we've taken a long scenic
Yeah.
route in some areas, but we were still able to get there,
Yeah.
finally.
I think one of the other pieces of defining your destination, and this is another how piece, is commitment. Once you identify where you
Yep.
think you want to go, or maybe it's not totally defined, but you've got a direction that you're heading. I want to go to trade school. I want to go directly into the workforce. I want to
Right.
whatever. Go into the military, go to college. Um, Commitment is a big piece of that. You
Yep.
have to be committed, because if you start and never complete something, you're going to get some benefit out of it, but it may not get you where you want to be.
Right.
So that
Exactly.
level of commitment is very important. And there's a caveat to that. You can be overly committed to something and you wind up burning through, all your energy and all your time to never fully get there, because you've overcommitted to doing something one exact way without that
Right.
flexibility,
Yep.
without understanding what are I'm going to go through all these barriers instead of taking this, this detour that's going to get me around those barriers.
Right. Yep.
So, the level of commitment and patience and flexibility, and you mentioned flexibility several times, I believe is paramount to part of this. How do you define your destination? Because you can say you want to go someplace, but if you're not committed to going there, you may not ever reach it.
Right. Yep. No, I agree 100%, because I am one of those people that failed in the commitment stages early on in my education. I've
Mhm.
said this before. I started and stopped 4 times before it finally took for me in my education journey. I did not have the commitment that it took for me to get where I needed to go. And that's why, again, I failed multiple times because of that. So, and then, you touched on it again. The flexibility piece is very important. Like, I think I started off with, you can
Yeah.
have the exact blueprint, say me, you, or someone successful. It provides to you. They hand it to you in a silver bolt with a silver bow tied to it, and say, follow this exactly, and you're going to get there. And that won't be the case, because the timing won't be the same.
Yeah.
Everything will not align with the previous iteration of that successful journey.
Right.
So you have to be flexible enough to say, okay, well, they were able to do this, but it's not working for me. So maybe I should try this. Maybe I should try
Right.
that. So
Right.
that's
Absolutely.
that's the power of the flexibility. Because again, we can have it laid out exactly to the T, but the expectation is that there are going to be some variables that we couldn't predict, we
Hmm.
couldn't expect. So that's why it's important to define that destination, but also be flexible enough or understanding enough to know that it won't go off without a hitch. There's
Right.
going to be something that's changed, something that's different, than the way you anticipate it. Because we all see the, destination as, oh, it's a straight shot.
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to start A, and then a direct line is going to be my destination B.
Yeah.
But then when we go back and if we try and recalculate that journey, you'll see instead of taking 1,000 miles, we might have gone 4,000 miles just
Right.
because of the back and forth that we've had to do.
Exactly.
And so it's
Learning and
gonna
relearning sometimes.
absolutely, yeah, exactly. Because like you say, I've been in a position where you had to reapply for your job. Fortunately, I was able to get it, but there were people that didn't,
Hmm.
weren't back on the team again because they had to reapply. So that's what we're just trying to with this whole topic is just help you identify the importance of critical self-reflection, goal setting, and defining that whatever your process is to get you to your final destination. You have to really consider those things to get somewhere, unless they've talked about it, unless you're just going to go through life day to day, moment to moment, and then you get whatever comes your way.
Right.
I mean, that's a way to live, but at the same time, you can't, expect anything more than that if you don't plan, prepare, commit to
Hmm.
something that's going to get you down the road, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and one of the other nice things about defining your destination is that it helps you stay focused. It's a
Absolutely.
reminder that
Yep.
when things get derailed or get a little, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of the process of getting to your destination, that helps you stay focused and
Yep.
motivated to to still persevere almost to a no matter what sort of scenario,
Absolutely. Yep.
and you and I both experience this throughout our careers. To get to some place, you have to be focused on getting there and committed, and you have to know what that destination looks like,
Yep.
and even potentially where that destination is.
Right.
So those are some things to consider and to remember. So in our last few minutes, what would you like to add to the conversation today about defining your destination?
Uh, we've touched on a lot of different things, but I think the most important thing is um, keeping in mind where you're trying to go, and that all starts with defining your destination. I mean, it really goes into being intentional about where you want to end up, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years. And that's why at the very beginning I talked about goal setting. That's part of goal setting, defining where you want to go, and then how you're going to get there, and then the critical self-reflection. They're all intertwined and important when you consider, where you're trying to go, where you want to end up. All those things are very important. And I think the last thing that we said many times on here too is the flexibility.
Yeah.
Again, we could have a well-defined path, destination for ourselves, but we can't anticipate all the variables, all the things that could happen or occur. But the idea is that you can stay focused. And I'll throw in the last thing that you said too about um, having a path. It helps you stay focused,
Hmm.
and sharing that with other people will
Yeah,
also help you stay
that's a big
focused
one.
because
Yeah.
now they're kind of your accountability partners. They're
Yeah.
helping you or assisting you, reminding you,
Hmm.
friendly reminders that, hey, did you do that assignment? Hey, where are
Yeah.
you at in your progress? So those are just some things. Like I say, we talked a lot about a lot of different things. So I just wanted to maybe highlight a few things that stick in my head. So that's all I have.
I think that's a great way to end the show. A great recap. So as you see when we talk about defining your destination, there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of things. Well, like so many things that we talk about, there's a lot that go into them, and there's a lot of relationship uh, between different topics and ideas. So with that, we'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for watching another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. If you enjoyed or learned or gleaned some sort of little nugget out of this show, give us a like, give us a share. If you didn't, well, give us a share and a like anyways, because if it's not benefiting you, it could be benefiting someone else. And we just want you to remember, also contact information. If you have any suggestions or ideas or thoughts or comments, our information's below. So please give us a shout out. We love to hear the feedback. And with that, we want you to keep on being your not so ordinary you.